Right, we should be live now. I just wanted to check something out because for some reason the thing wasn't coming out. I wasn't being able to be fed to the stream, so I said I'm just gonna make a video. But I decided, you know what? Let's make it. Let's just stream. Let's figure out what's wrong. This is gonna happen again, sometime soon. So might as well get rid of it right now. For one, personal update. I created a new intro and outro. You see that? That is starting to look pretty nice now. As opposed to it just being a picture, now we got a little animation going. That's something that's pretty cool. Second thing is today I'm going to be going over a different thing. I want to see what kind of thing sticks to me. You know what feels cool to stream. That's something that I'm doing today. The other things I'm gonna see how things are looking right now. For one, my friend and I decided let's try to, be one of those normal people that are boring and just start a stream, start a podcast. I mean, let's why not? We have nothing else to do, but that's kind of something that we've been doing. But besides that, I believe I'm going to start talking about uh, today's topic, which is what's it called? Today we're going to be discussing how to create a today we're going to be discussing how we create a whole like identity for a podcast. And all I'm doing right now is doing something a little bit more I'm just playing around with stuff right now. Don't mind me. I'm just getting the whole stream ready. This we could actually not there, but here. There you go. Okay. Moving this artboard a little bit more. I'm just fixing some stuff. Don't worry about me. Something like 3,000. Artboard 5 2,000. Oh, I think it's because of the cloud, right? Cloud should be there. Yeah, just fixing some stuff really fast. No big deal. Should be starting right in like a minute or so. And side. Side. Right. All right. We should be good now. So, I started off talking to my friend and we decided, hey, let's make a podcast. Let's get some ideas out there. And what he decided to go for is something like this, right? So as you can see here, and I will make this a little bit closer here, zoom this in. This was a sketch that he went with, right? This is something that he wanted to come up with. You can see what I extract when you're an artist, and I'm not gonna say I'm an artist. I'm just gonna say like when you're trying to be creative is what's a person trying to get out there, and what do you want to make, right? So what did I want to make? I wanted to make a podcast, so we made sure that it was in a square, right? Because that's kind of how a lot of them come out. the next thing, what do we see him? He's really emphasizing the little clouds, the soft clouds, the sun. He also wants the title to be very important, right? So those are the elements that we're taking away. The other thing is get up. Get up is like a sunset, kind of like you're just waking up kind of vibe, right? So I went on Behance, which is like a website that you get to like just put in whatever keywords you want and you get the aesthetics. But you start looking at like things that kind of match the same kind of like vibe you're going for, right? So this is like a gradient of like going from pink to like a peach color. You got the more I was gonna say trendy vibes that are going with this, right? Because if you see a lot of intros right now, everything looks a little bit more like futuristic-y kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I'm going for. And then I kept looking around, right? I found these pictures. They all kind of have the same vibe, the same color, the same early morning red eye kind of flight. That's why I found these. It's like what I started picturing this is like, oh, what kind of people would listen to this podcast, right? It's the same people that would catch these red eye flights. It's the same kind of people that would be up right now. Which is kind of cool that the cloud is like right here, but you know, it's the same people that would go to like these jogs and they're just kind of, you know, relaxing. It's like a relaxful, peaceful kind of thing. Then from these, I extracted colors and I was just, you know, picking out whatever colors I found interesting. This orange, I believe I got from this picture from the window or from somewhere here. This red, I believe, is one of these reds, I think. Especially in this gradient, I think I just found whichever one I kind of liked. The yellow one, I'm almost 100% sure the yellow is this yellow. I don't remember so well, but I know these two colors came from here, and then this blue one came from somewhere in this picture, right? I think it was like somewhere in the sky or somewhere here in the cloud that I found this blue that I really liked. But again, I wanted to make sure that we had two options. So from this one, I did the exact same thing, but I went with a different aesthetic. So we're just gonna zoom into this one. And this one, it's a little bit more of like a funky. You see that the fonts are a little bit different. They're a little bit more like, what is this, like 80s futuristic kind of stuff. The other ones felt more like trendy, like nowadays, current. This one felt more like a throwback kind of thing if you wanted it to be. So right here, you see get up, stand up. I found this again on Behance. And because it just said that and the fonts are all kind of twisty and stuff, I'm like, oh, this looks kind of like perfect for what we want to do. So I went along with these pictures. Again, I extracted the colors. I believe this purple is this one or this one. This green one is from here. This yellow one, these two are from here and here, I believe. And then this white one, if I remember correctly, it was from here or from here. But I think it was this one. And again, I want to go look for a font. I really like this font. I think it's called Funky Dory or something like that. But I really like it because it has the same like kind of curvy. Like I didn't want these like super sharp kind of like hand painted things. I wanted it to be a little bit more kind of like a workout video. Like this is the font you would see in a workout video. Those like you're dancing with like your tights, exactly like that. How do I extract the colors? Thank you. So first, let's say that I want to extract from here, right? And I want to get a color. I go and I'm trying to see if you can tell, but there's this first I'm going to make a rectangle, and the way I make a rectangle is, and I'm not sure if you can see this, I cut it off specifically, but you go and you make a square, right? You do this. I don't really remember the tool names or stuff like that. I just know it's U. I think it's the rectangle tool. And you get this, right? I was playing around with other stuff in a previous project, right? So you have this, right? You made it by just clicking U, and then you make your little square. Then from here, you click on its color, right? And when you click on its color, it'll pop up a window. Or you can do, I believe, I, the letter I. So it gives you this like little crosshair, which is called the eye picker tool. And then let me check. I have it on. I've been playing around with a bunch of stuff. Yeah, so this little crosshair, I changed mine, but all it does is it's able to sample colors on wherever you want. So if I want this pink, I click on it, and I don't know if you can see this like colorful circle, but it essentially starts looking at all the pixels, right? If you want something more from the ground from here, you want something from here in the like the yellow, you could also go into like the pink and the, you know, into whatever color. Once you click on it, it gives you the color. So let's say now I want this pink one, right? Now when I go into this rectangle, I can just click on it and it's the exact same matching pink, right? So let me do that again. I want a specific color, right? Okay, good, you can see it. I want a specific color. I click I for the eyedropper tool, and let's say that I want to get this this blue from the funk, right? You just have to hover over it and click on it. It samples it, and on your right side there's going to be like all the colors that you've sampled or if you're selected. Then you just click on it and then bam, right? As long as you're in this one, right? If you go to like a different square, let's say I click on this one, and then I do the same thing, see, it'll go to that square. So make sure that you're selecting the right one. So that's something that I've been doing. That's kind of how I got those colors, and I saw that from this one person called Kel Lauren. She's kind of like a big, I wouldn't say an inspiration, but she really helps out because she doesn't go through like how to do stuff. I don't know if you guys heard that, sorry. It doesn't go through how to do stuff, like how to color pick. She goes more through the creative process of how she comes up with stuff. And so I kind of followed her workflow for this, on how to get the aesthetics for this, right? So once this was done, I sent it over and it said, yo, which one do you prefer? Which one like looks more like your vibe that you would kind of want to be proud to kind of use? And at the end of the day, they said this one, right? So you said this one. I said, okay, cool. So now we're gonna take this out, and let me go in my little intermission. And now we're here. Sorry it took a little while. I'm trying to make sure everything looks good. So this is Illustrator, and this is where everything that you do is um is vectorized. And what vector means is that you can stretch this out. You can stretch this out um into whatever size you want, because everything is worked through equations as opposed to pixels, right? And I'll give you an example. Give me a second. Okay, you can see everything. All right, so let me give you an example. um let's say that you want to make a circle, right? With this ellipse tool, which is L, you can make this circle, and you can just expand it as much as you want. Whereas in Photoshop, if you rasterize something there, it creates it into pixels, and those pixels cannot do this, right? When it does, it starts to lose quality. Another thing is this helps because you have a shaper tool, and that, let's say that we do something like this, right? when we select both of them and we go into this thing called the shape builder tool, which is Shift M, you see how now I'm able to, and let me zoom this in. Now you see how I'm able to kind of choose. What you can do is like you draw a line over both of them and this becomes its shape, right? As opposed to now this and this are different, right? So if I've subtracted, if I subtract this by holding the Alt key, if I subtract this, now it made this shape. And in Photoshop, that's a little bit harder to do, but in this one, you just made like a little chubby moon in a few steps, right? And that's the power of Illustrator that Photoshop does not have. So I always recommend, if you can, get the Illustrator and Photoshop, right? They do different things. Let's say that, again, you have this shape now, but you kind of want something a little bit different. You go back into your ellipse tool, and it doesn't just have to be circles. Let's say that you want to do a star, right? You hold a star. I want it to look like this. Now I go into these selection tools, go to the shape builder, and punch a hole in the moon. And you see, right? You could also, in this one, and I'll stop after a little while, but let's say that you want a red stroke and punch this up like this. There's another tool called the width tool, which is one of the biggest things that I like. And you can have certain widths of the stroke, which you cannot do in Photoshop at all. And you can make it look something like this, right? So really, this might look a little bit weird, but what I'm trying to do is make unique shapes. Yeah. Just two? Perfect. So what you can do is you can start designing whatever kind of shape you want. Let's say that for some reason this is the logo that you want to make, but now you can make it and it's all vectorized, right? So if you want to make it super small, there you go. You want to make it super large, there you go. And it keeps the same things, right? You don't lose any pixels. That's the cool part. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, let's get into the thought process. I have this, right? I have the colors here. Number one is we don't really need this part anymore, but we're just going to focus on this. What should I do? First of all, we went through a little change. Instead of calling it get up, wake up, because now it's more of a sunsetty as opposed to like a workout kind of vibe. So, no, that's what I did, wake up. I went to go look for a few more fonts, right? And I'll give you a brief description on why I chose these. This is more of a standard font. This is something that I was like, well, let's just play it safe. Let's put a safe font there just in case. This one's a little bit more bold, like literally bold, but I meant like a little bit more adventurous because the A is a little bit more rounded. It looks a little bit more like pops out into your face. This one, which is something that I would say is the most experimental, because if you notice these P's, like they look a little bit more professional. This one looks way more casual. This A also looks way more casual. The W is rounded. This looks more playful, more I want to say original. And this one is like a mix in between all of them, where maybe you do want to play it a little bit safe, but you also still want to have like a little bit of fun in there, but not really go all the way. This is something that I found. The reason why I chose this one is because this W kind of looks like a little bird, and I'm like, oh well, if it's wake up and remember the clouds here, I want to make sure maybe we add a little bird still in there. Let me have this one just in case, right? But or really get into the fonts, I want to get into these shapes, right? Because I want to make sure that I get these clouds. And how do I make a cloud in Illustrator? It's super easy. Again, we make few circles. Yeah, it is pretty cool. It's and I'm just learning this um like what's it called? I just learned this week. I haven't really been using this Illustrator as much as I would want to. But give me 1 second. I am going to be doing some behind the scenes stuff. And then I'll get back in it. I'll be back in like 10 seconds. All right, I'm back. All I did was I imported back the colors. Um and what I did is I just created the boxes again, right? And while I was doing that kind of stuff, one of the things that I got was I I edited these colors because if you notice here, this orange isn't as strong, and I'll go over this a little bit later, but I just want to use them so I can have the colors, right? So I want to make this into a cloud. I have one. Now I want to make another box because if you notice a cloud, um they kind of have, you have to start looking at the shapes of them. They kind of have these like circles here, and then this would be a bigger circle, and then this would be a longer circle, and then it has like a flat line, right? And yours were a little bit more like shaggy clouds, which I was going for, but when I created them, they didn't really look like clouds. They looked a little bit more like bushes. So I wanted to make them look more like GTA Dragon Ball, like DBZ kind of clouds. So if you hold the Alt key and you drag, you can create like another one of the exact same size. Oops. See? So then I just start more or less figuring out, all right, well, here's the first one, here's the second bump, make the third bump, and let's make this one a little bit bigger. And you can do that because Illustrator, again, none of the quality gets lost, right? And then how do we get this bottom part? We just make a rectangle, right? And again, the cool stuff about Illustrator, it also helps guide you. See, it like finds the intersections for me, so I don't have to do that. But if you notice at the corner, you can round these, right? So I can make it look like this, or because this one needs a little bit more, I can do that. I could also individually choose these two only, round these all the way, make this one a little bit smaller, maybe bring it down a little bit, or just extend this. And there you go. That looks like a little chubby cloud, right? Then what I can do is maybe round this one a little bit and maybe bring it a little bit here. And there we go, right? It looks like a little cloud. Maybe that should be fine for the demonstration. Here's the first cloud, right? But if you want to move it, right, it starts falling apart because they're still all shapes. So what do? You want to create them all in a group. And there's two ways. Let's say that you want to keep editing them, right? You want theirs to be different clouds, but you don't want them to look like the exact same. What you can do is you like click and select all of them, then you do group, and now if you move one, you move them all, right? So now if you do that alt and click, you get the same cloud, but now you can edit this one. So how do you edit it? Again, you click on it, and this time you right click and then you ungroup, And now this cloud could be slightly different from the other cloud, right? So now, if I really wanted to, maybe this one gets higher here, and this one gets closer here. This one isn't as long, right? So now you created two new clouds through the same kind of pictures, right? Through the same figures or shapes. Now what you do is, again, you click on only the ones you want to merge, and then you go on the shape builder tool, which is Shift and M. And now let's say that you want to take this part off, bam, you can punch it out. Or you can just hold, like click and drag all the parts of the shapes that you want to merge. I think those are all of them. And bam, you got a cloud shape, right? That's where I was going. Let's say that you want to make this cloud also one shape. Same thing, click over all of them, Shift M. Make sure you click over everything, bam, right? So sometimes one thing that you really want to not focus on, or actually focus on, is when you're in the shape builder, sometimes these little places, because it goes through every intersection, you might not click on them. So let's say that you do something like this, right? When you move this around, and I believe this is, no, okay, you can also see these little parts right here for some reason didn't get stuck. So now you have this weird line here, you have this, right? And that's bad, because when you're gonna be moving those pixels, it's fine for one cloud, right? Because then you can just say, oh yeah, I'll just make it a little bit bigger and I'll cover both, and this I'll just delete it. But let's say that you didn't notice and you've been copying and pasting these many clouds before. Now you're kind of screwed, because you have to do this to every single one, right? And then like even here I didn't cover it all the way, right? So my suggestion is always make sure you get the first one completely right, even if it takes like a few minutes. You see here there's an anchor missing, here you have something. So if I move this, yeah, see, there's right here. What else is here? I think that's it. This one I'm gonna put it here. And the cool thing is you don't have to be extremely accurate, as long as you can cover it, and then Shift M, you just combine all of them, bam, there you go, one cloud, it's all good, right? Now how do I recolor them? It's almost the same thing. I believe it's even the same shortcut. You just click I, and now this one gives me this eyedropper tool, but it's the same thing. Let's say that I want this one to be this color. Oops. I want this one to be this color. Bam. Wait, I wanted this color or this one. Right? And you can play around until you see, oh, I kind of like this color. You could even go on this sheet and say, well, I didn't really like this color. Let me keep experimenting. Oh, see? So this is the same color. Let me keep experimenting to see what kind of color I could get. Oh, I like this color for a cloud, right? And now you can put them. You see how this one went underneath, and it's because there's layers in this. The way that you can like bring one out is by clicking on it, then do control and like the square brackets. If you do the closed end bracket, or like the last one, the one that you put at the end, it moves it up, and if you do the bottom one, it moves it down, right? So that's something that we can do. But now we have the clouds. We're getting this. The sun is pretty easy, because the sun, all you really have to do is get the circle tool, right? And get the eyedropper tool, and bam, you made a sun. Now the stuff that I want to go through, and it's something in my intro. If you see my intro, I'm going to delete this because I don't need them anymore. But if you look at my intro, you can see that my sun has rays, right? And there's an easy way to make rays. in Illustrator, right? The way that you make them is you with the same circle tool, you do this, right? But instead of having the fill, you get the stroke to be yellow. Let me increase this just so you can see it. And I'm gonna make it a different color. I wanna make it uh like pink, right? Ooh, not that much pink. A little bit more orange. There you go. Just so you can see the difference, right? You go on this, and then there's an option, and I don't know if you can see the option, but you should be able to on the right side. There's an option here called dashed line. You click on it and it makes the dashes for you. You can choose for them to be to preserve the right lengths and stuff like that, or there's just a bunch of options that you can do for this stuff. You can also change how thick you want the lines to be, right? And just for this purpose, for these purposes, I want them to be very big, right? Now that you have these amount of dashes, they're about 85 pixels long. You go into the width tool, and you just stretch it out, right? And you see how it's turning like this. If I remember correctly, there should be a width tool around here called weight, and you can just keep going with this, right? You could make it 500, and you got this. You could also make well, you can't tell, but you can make them circular, right? Let me go back to this. Something around 400, maybe 100, right? And you can make the ends circular, so now it looks like a little flower. Or you could keep them like this, straight on the edges. And you notice that there's a little gap. Let's say that you want them to be like mine and they stretch out all the way, right? But now they have this weird circle in the middle. Well, remember that these things are just shapes. So what do I do here? I can convert this into a shape. And if I remember correctly, again, I'm just learning this, so I don't remember everything exactly. But oops, if I remember this correctly, what it can do is create a object, I believe, and you just make expand appearance, I believe. No, there's some way to make this into there it is. Right now that there's this little gap, if I remember correctly, and also make them into shapes, but I think I did that in After Effects. I don't quite remember. Let's make some like right. Let's leave it like this, right? This is now your sun. Looks nice. Back, let me make the sun a little bit more bright, right? So now I know I can make all of the ads in this, but then we go into how do I create it? How do I create the rest of the look, right? Because this isn't something that I really want. This is cool, but this isn't really for the podcast. I'm gonna delete this, and this is where I'm gonna just talk about more or less how I created it. I started off with something like this. I wanted it to be a sunset, but I wanted to add that it's a podcast slash it's trying to, so that's more like for music, because that was one of my ideas. I'm like, well, I kind of wanted to be music, but I wanted to still add this, right? Let me ungroup. Let me. My idea was to do something like. Oops. Something like. Oh, I can't reach that. Oh, color picker tool, and something like. Right where the. You can see the W. I was gonna put a little bit more W's in the background. But the bad part about this is it's not that it's a bad design, but it's definitely something that looks a little amateurish. The way that you can tell it's amateur is because everything's super flat. There's not much in the background, and what's the point of like the rest, right? If I wanted it to look, at least something a little bit not as bad as something as simple as just stretching out the image, and it's a little bit too big. But something as simple as just stretching out the image just so it looks a little bit more purposeful, so we reduce the background, even that looks a little bit better. But this was one of the things, and once I realized we have to start playing around with images, right? We have the sun and we have music that we have to go off of, so what can we do? And so I thought about it. I'm like, well, what if the headphone is the sun, right? And so let me go back here, and this is where we can start experimenting. It's, what if there's a sun right here, and then we have like the little headphone part here, and maybe we are listening through a speaker like this, and let me copy this too, and let me make this shorter, and I'm just gonna make like the little mic, right? And I'm going through a lot of stuff just because I'm like, even right now I'm just play testing, right? Let me rotate this a little bit more, right? Now we get this one and we make it into that color, we bring it forward, right? What if it's something like this, and then it has like little sun rays in the back, right? That could look kind of cool, but it's like a little phone operator-y, right? I didn't really like that. What if we get something like, go back to this. What if it's all just type? What if this is just the wake up podcast? We don't really need this. It's just the wake up podcast, and then I just add like a little sun and some clouds in the background. That looks cool, but that's very like too easy, right? Like, I want to push myself a little bit more. And what I realized is that a record player and a sun are both circles, right? And that might be something super easy to make or super easy to connect. But when you're creating like 4 or 5 mockups, that one to me stuck out a little bit more. Why? Because this looks a little bit like super easy to read, right? It's not anything else worth reading. As soon as you see this, you're like, oh yeah, it's like a sunset, and that's like some headphones, so it's like a weather or like a music kind of like playlist stuff. But I wanted to make something a little bit nicer, right? So first I created this, right? I had the same colors and I did this, and the easy way, I guess that you can call it, the easy way is to do something like this, but then you have to remember that this is also a podcast. Where's the text gonna fit, right? I guess it could fit here, I guess it could fit kind of here, but there's not much space left. However, this looks pretty dope, right? This looks like a pretty cool like radio show podcasty kind of thing. On dot. Thanks. But that's kind of where I was going with this. I was thinking, this one looks pretty cool. This one kind of looks more like a banner. So because you don't really have a lot of stuff in the banners just there for decorations, this one look cool. Or for like stickers, right? People who wanna buy stickers, this would definitely be like something that we can put in the store and sell. That's where I was going. I'm like, yeah, we could go on this, but I don't know. Let me make another one, and it's the same elements, except it's 2 different colors, right? these are the ones that I was going with. Which one looks a little bit nicer? Which one looks like it makes a little bit more sense? And let me just, for some reason, this is having a hard time clipping. Go. So this is the project, right? I created the little cloud asset. I created these pictures, and I could take these off. But I created these. Right? It went from this look, a couple mock-ups to the vibe we want to go to the right lettering. Sorry, I keep clicking the wrong button. To, you know, first design, figuring out, playing around with shapes and stuff like that until we get into these two, right? This one looked nice, but these look a little bit easier to read. You can place a lot more things in there. And if you notice here, this was the original color. This color. But when you put it on this, I don't know if it's just me, but when I had it on this one, and let me, hopefully I don't mess it up, but when I had it on this, it just looked like a nipple. And I didn't like that. So I went to go look for a darker orange. Right? And you can still tell it's an orange. It's like, you know, it's still like the sunsetty kind of stuff. But I just didn't like that part. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to mess with that. Let's just leave it into a darker orange, so it looks a little bit more reasonable, I guess. So that's how I came up with those two. Then I sent it over to the person, or, you know, to you. I sent it over and I'm like, all right, these are the two kind of colors. What do you want to go with? Right? And when I was doing this, they said, oh, the sunset in the back. And they were giving me good ideas where they're like, oh, and I want the gradient to be in the background so it looks like a sunset, and I want that kind of stuff. And here's something that you need to be as a designer. You need to also back up your choices. So if I wanted the sunset, I could have made a gradient. But when you're looking at these cartoony styles, there's not much of a gradient. And all of this is called flat design, which is there's no gradient, there's no like crazy effects or anything. It's just basic shapes. It makes things look cartoony. It makes things look nice and perfect and, you know, geometric. And that's what I kind of liked about it. I said, we can do the gradient on the videos, but on this, especially on this podcast, I don't want people to have so much to look at. I want it to be very easily read, and not read as in this, but I mean legible, where things aren't really combating stuff. And to be quite honest, even here, that is something that I was trying to figure out how to fix, because the contrast between this yellow, this gray, and this blue makes it, at least for me, a little bit hard to read. Right? It blends in a little too well. And so what I could have done here is maybe make this a little bit darker, or make this a little bit more yellow. But, you know, I kind of like it like this, right? I like these colors. I could fix it, but the only thing that I would really fix is something like, I get something like this, and I change the color to be just a little bit darker. Right? And you can see now that it becomes more legible. But I don't like that it looks like a little rainy. So I can bump up the yellow here. Right? Let's say that I really want to bump this yellow up. Oops. And I make it a little bit more saturated. Right? Now that works a little bit better. But then it kind of takes away, like now the yellow is a little strong, that the rest of the thing gets a little bit overpowered. So I said, let's just leave it like this. Let's go through it. Let's see if the podcast can actually get on its feet before I really start to perfect the whole logo. I feel like after like the fourth, fifth time, we really start to see what looks good and what doesn't. And so I sent this out, and I'm like, all right, this is kind of what I want to do. But in the video, remember, this is a podcast. There's two audiences. There is the listening people, and then because we want to upload to YouTube, there is the video people. A lot of people don't have YouTube Premium or YouTube Plus or whatever it's called, YouTube Red. But YouTube Premium, so when you close your phone, the video stops. So the video people have to put it on their computer or on their phone in the background. But now we have to compete with the viewers, right? We have to have something to add on from this to make the viewers more excited about this. And the cool thing about this is I know how to do it, and it's through After Effects. Because the amazing thing about the Adobe Suite or the Adobe Creative Cloud, wait, make the A have a shadow like the W on the cloud side. Oh, so you're saying so it does have the thing, but because they're all at this angle, the thing just gets overshadowed. So like if you click on the shadow here, you can see that it's here, right? The other thing that I could do is, let's say that I want to ungroup this and I just want to do the shadows. I could do it this way. Oops. And I could move these. And this could look cool too, right? Why not? But at least for now, I prefer that they're going this way because we read from here to here. So we want to make sure that we keep those there. And there's nothing wrong with that. To be quite honest, it looks fine. But again, with the tweaking, we'll get there. We'll get there. And I also wanted to have a little bit more of your input, but when I'm working, like I didn't really want to give. I wanted to make my own decisions. But if this thing is really like a big problem, then we could fix it, obviously. And the cool thing about it is that I designed it. When you usually have someone else design it, you pay them again, right? But because I did it and it's gonna be for our project, like, yeah, I'll fix it, right? But now let's go into like the interesting part. Now that everything's done, we figured out the fonts and everything, let's go into After Effects and let's go into After Effects and we're gonna see how we animate this, right? And right now I'm just gonna chill. I want to make sure that I don't show any like crazy stuff. Also, what? I also want to make sure that I'm not spilling anything, right? So how do I import from here? The good thing about this is that these are all, again, vectors, so they're shapes. How do we get that into After Effects? And that's something that I'm going to show right now. Just give me a moment. I'm going to be switching from Illustrator to After Effects, and that's going to take a little while. I'll be back in like a minute at most. So give me a second. Actually, I'll do it live because I have no idea how to edit apart from After Effects. I don't know. I still don't know how to use the what's it called? The now that this is here, I'm gonna put it Illustrator. Go. Things good. And now we're here, right? What I did on the background is that I put this in its own document, and you'll see why. But the main reason why I don't think you can see it, but the reason why I didn't put this normal one and I don't import this, and you'll see what I mean by that. The reason why I didn't make it is because when you put import on from After Effects and I import something from Illustrator, it's gonna make every single thing here go into the project, and I really don't want 3 different versions of this going in there. I know this is the one we're gonna work with, so these are the only things I really want to touch, right? So I made a new one where it essentially just got these and I put them here, right? In a new one, and then that I imported. But that's not what I really want to do. And then I made this 1080 and stuff like that. Like right now it's 1000 by 1000, but because it's video, we need a 1080 by 1080. And the good part is that because these are all shapes, when you scale them all up, everything stays the exact same. So let's jump back into After Effects, right? And let me take off Illustrator, right? Go into this After Effects stuff, see what I can do to make it a little bit better. Effects, make this a little taller, move this here. There we go, right? What can you see? Sample 1, spinning animation. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to close Illustrator. I'm going to show you how I went from that into something like this, right? Hopefully it works, and it's not going to be full quality because, or else my computer will blow up. But how we went from that into something like this, right? Taking the concept of the disc playing and the clouds into a full animation where you're able to see the sunset and you're able to see everything else move, right? And I just made it 30 seconds because I wanted to show this to a customer or to a client or whatever you want to call them. I'll just call them customer. How it's gonna look at the end, right? It's like a little sunset, and we're just playing, and while it's talking, right? This is for the YouTube people, so they have something to look at besides just a picture. If you notice other podcasts, they just put a picture, unless it's like a visual one, like the Joe Rogan one. There's really not much else you see. Yeah, I'm trying not to make it blow up. I mean, it should be able to handle it, right? But taking precautions. Now we have this, and the good thing, like I said, is that when you right click and you put import, and I don't want to show all my files. One, I don't want to be shamed for having like 1,000 files named the exact same thing and stuff like that. When you right click and you put import file, you just go to the right one, and as you can see here, it's just this, like, it's just this footage, right? So when we make a new composition by right clicking new composition, and then you get to put its settings, right? 1920 by 1080, 30 pixels, and let me check if you can see that. Just checking. I'm just looking at my stream now. I am like 10-15 seconds behind on what you're actually seeing, so I'm just like looking around. Yeah, okay, so you can't see my right click. That's something that I need to fix for the streams. But essentially, you just right click on this section right here, project, and there's gonna be options. There's gonna be like 7 of them, and you just put import file. You look for it, and then it comes out, right? We drag it into the sample, right? This is your sample composition. This is my full one, but this is the sample. And if you notice here, there's nothing. You can transform it, which means you can move it around, right? The background moves around with it. You can move the anchor point, which is very useful. So let's say that you want to spin this. It's spinning on the crosshair right in the middle, right? But you don't want it to spin there. you want it to spin, let's say on the disc. You can move this anchor point, right? And everything that has to do with position revolves around the anchor point. So now that it's here, see, now that's right in the center, and when we rotate it, now it's rotated on the disc and not anything else. And you can move this anchor point to wherever you want. Let's say that you want to move it to top of this here, right? We align this, and then we just rotate this. It'll rotate right wherever you want to put the anchor point. But those are all the little lessons that, you know, you can look at any YouTube tutorial. The way that you get from here into having them all separate, so like, let's say that I don't want these certain things. See, I just want this void of a shadow. The way you do that is by going here, right clicking, and you can't see this, but when you right click, there should be something called create, and then create shapes from vector layer. You click on it, and now let's say that nothing's visible, right? Only this one. Now everything's visible, but you can move everything individually, right? So this cloud is now its own thing. The shadow of the cloud is its own thing. And the hardest part, at least the most boring part, is that you have to go through, and if you look at your contents, now you have these groups. You have to figure out what is what, right? So group 1, oh, it's this cloud, and group 2 is the bottom of the cloud. The way that I do it is, okay, I know of the bottom of the cloud, so we're gonna duplicate this by Control D, duplicate. I'm gonna turn this one off, and I know that 1 and 2 are the first clouds, so everything else I have to delete. And I would just have the cloud. Then I rename this cloud a bottom cloud. Remember, try to keep everything organized. Bottom cloud. Now we have that. And in this one, we're gonna delete it, because if we don't delete it, we have it something like this. When we play around with the cloud, you're gonna see, oh, this one stayed in the exact same position. That's not what I want. So once you have the bottom cloud, delete it from this one. And this will make things easier, because the next time you duplicate it, now this one is going to be 3. Okay, so all this 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is something else. So from here, we delete these, and this one's gonna be called record player, just because that's the best way that I can remember stuff. Record player. Now we know this went all the way up to from 3 to 8. So this one, 3 to 8, we don't need anymore. And we just keep doing that until you get them all in the separate layers. Now, the other thing is, if we look at this bottom cloud and you put it over, it's hiding it, right? It's hiding this record player. But by moving it to the bottom below, where it says below record player, it's now underneath. And the layers work like that. This is the thing at the most bottom, and this is right at the top. So if you want to layer them to look a little bit different, there you go, right? And you just keep doing this until you get the right one. And once you're all done with that, then we're gonna go into the actual spinning animation. We're here. I put all the layers right. I went and I found the same font, which actually looks a little bit different, because the fonts in After Effects and the fonts in Illustrator are different for some reason. That's the one thing that I don't like about Adobe, is that they don't keep the same fonts with themselves. So I had to find another font that kind of has a similar vibe to it, but I don't really like it. So like, we go to full. right? The W is not as playful. I like that the P and the D and the A's are still kind of like cool, but you know, I have to look again. And maybe what I can do is, because I have these assets, maybe bring in the fonts from the other one and put them here. That's something that we can do. But for now, these will do. So there it is, right? These are all the fonts. Put them the way that I wanted to. And you might be thinking, why are they all the way outside? And it's because I animated them, right? For the video, I wanted the clouds to kind of be like normal clouds, right? They just hover. And this might blow up my computer. Let me put it to right. The other thing that you notice is that the clouds are not the straight clouds that you see here. You see how the bottom here is like perfectly straight? The clouds in this one, if I go to full, they're starting to twist a little bit, right? So you see how much it stutters? But they're starting to twist a little bit. And the more that you go in, they have like different twists, right? We'll get to that. But first, let's get into how we move them. In After Effects, there's this thing called keyframes. And what the keyframes do is they say at this frame in the video, and let me zoom in so you can see, this timeline are all just frames. If you go all the way here to the front, this 001F, which is frame 1, and see you can't go anywhere in between. This is the second frame, the third frame, all the way until you get to the frame that you want it to be, right? I put 30 frames per second. Right here, 28th frame, 29th frame, and the 30th frame is the first second, right? That's kind of what it means, but we want to make them move. When you go into, like, let's say this bottom cloud, you can see where the keyframes are by these little dots, but what they really mean is that at this exact frame, you can set a certain value, right? And anything before that, before the first keyframe, it stays exactly where it is. So if you notice on the left side right here, everything else is moving, that's staying the exact same. As soon as it crosses that keyframe, it starts moving. And from this keyframe to this keyframe, it's saying you're going to switch the value, which is your position, from 108, 540 all the way till it gets to 1040, 540, right? So I'm not moving up and down, I'm just moving side to side. And I'm just saying from this point all the way to this point, you're going to take even intervals until I get there, right? If I move this keyframe closer, you see that it moved a little bit, but that's because now it's earlier. Now the cloud starts moving earlier in the sequence. We can make it move right away by moving it here, right? Now right away, it starts moving, but it's going to end up in the exact same position because that's where I told it to stop. I'm going to put this back to more or less where it should be. And again, everything could change. Not only that, but you can do it with every single part of a cloud. So you can fix, if you look at the things here, I wish I could like zoom in somehow, but if you can see here, there's the scale, there's a rotation. Let's move the cloud somewhere where you can see it. I can scale it, right? And it all has to depend on this thing right here, but I can scale it. How do I reset? I can rotate it, right? If I really wanted to. I can make it more or less transparent. I could even add more anchor points. So let's say that on this one, somewhere around here, I actually wanted to land somewhere around here, right? And then when it gets back to here, it goes back to the normal place, right? So we play it, it moves to my second point first, and then it goes back to the other point, right? And there's a lot more things you could do with keyframes, but that's something that I wanted to do with the clouds. Now, how do I get them to be fluffy, or how do I make them have these little curves, even though we designed them to be like this? There is this thing in effects called turbulent displacement. And what that does is it creates a grid. So you know how grids are normally like that, like graphing, they're perfectly straight. It gets those straight lines and starts curving them randomly. So instead of them being completely straight like this, they start becoming more like this, right? And now the images start warping to them. And you can apply it to your whole project, or you could just apply it to one of these, right? One of these objects. They're actually called layers, but that's kind of how I got it to look like that. It should be rotating according to. It doesn't matter. But that's essentially what we're trying to do, right? Now, with that turbulent displacement, that's where I was going. Let me go to the effects. Here, remember, we're paying attention to this one cloud, this one. But this turbulent displacement, you could change it to be whatever you want. They also have a lot of settings. And all these things are happening to your computer, so that's why I'm trying not to push things too much, or else it might blow up because I'm streaming and doing this. But if you change the amount, you see how much more warped it gets, the cloud, and as it moves, get closer here, you see how it really starts changing. If we stop and we render this frame, how much crazier it gets. And you could change the settings to be whatever. You could also change the size of this so that the grid, instead of being straight, let's say that there's 100 little squares in here, the size would make it so that there's only 40 squares. So now the effect switching, because now there's only a square from here to here, it becomes, I guess, a little bit smoother. If there's 1,000 of them, then everything starts becoming more jagged. That makes sense. The last thing that I want to show off is how do I get the sunset, right? Because we learned how to do this one. This is, you rotate it, right? This we're rotating. Last thing is, how do we get that sunset? And that was my hardest thing because I never knew it. But there's this thing called colorama, another effect. And all you do is you just set what points you want, and it'll loop through them. So once you get here, it starts from here and it does like a full circle, right? It went from here, it's somewhere around here now, reaching the reds, reach the red, now it's headed to the yellow, to the orange, I mean. Somewhere around here now, this yellow, now it's almost here. Now it's passing to the yellow. Now it passed into the blue, and now it's gonna go straight into the darker blue, right? And then it starts all over again because I loop it. But that's how I got everything from here to work. The last thing that I was gonna say is, if you notice here, we get this little guy to be moving around a lot, and that's an effect called wiggle. Go back here to the effects, and you just get to choose how much you want it to wiggle and what you want to wiggle. I said wiggle its position, so it kind of moves every now and then, like where you want it to look, because in a record player, this part here, that's kind of moving while it's playing because of all the little grooves, right? So I wanted to add that little effect. And from there, we went from concept all the way to execution. We just rendered this out, and then we show it to the client and we say, all right, this is what I have in mind. And I did this in maybe like 8 hours, from not from concept to finish, but the animation. The animation to learning how to import, because I've never used Illustrator before, so I had to look up tutorials and stuff like that, but it took me about a full day of working on how to get everything to work. But now it's all done and everything looks cool, and now you can go and recreate this as well, or you can pay someone to discover it, pay someone to keep learning more. I actually want to add a little bit more to this, but everything else, you know, it'll be pretty easy. Yeah, thanks for watching. For the rest, I'm just gonna kind of leave it and see where I could go with this. Yeah, thanks for watching. Oh, also check out this last slide that I created. This is something else that I did on After Effects.